Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Hagam, and I'd like to welcome everyone here to the Cancer Conquering Community on Thursday. And we are just doing very well. I'm here in Texas, and we've been having spectacular weather. It's been in the 70s and 80s for the last month, pretty much, which is unheard of, but it's been gorgeous. So wherever you are in the world, I hope that you're having beautiful weather, enjoying the fall. The fall is here, and we got Halloween coming up, and Thanksgiving and Christmas, and before you know it, we will have the end of the year. But we have a phenomenal guest this morning, and his name is Chris Joseph. I did a series of 3 interviews with him, and we could literally talk all day long. But what I want to do is bring him on, have him introduce himself, and share his absolutely incredible story. So let's do that without further ado. Chris Joseph, please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about who you are, and we're going to get into an incredible conversation.
Good. Yeah, I'm glad it'll be a conversation because I mean, I will tell my story here in a minute. I don't have any sort of presentation or anything like that. So, yeah, keep feeding me questions and that'll help prompt me in which direction you want me to go
Oh,
in.
don't worry about that, Chris.
Uh, but so the shorter version of my story is next week will be October 31st. Next week will be 9 years since I was diagnosed with third stage pancreatic cancer. And I think maybe some of you or all of you know that 70%, 70% of people diagnosed with pancreatic cancer are dead within 1 year. 90% are dead within 5 years. So this is, like a few other cancers, this is one of the deadly ones. After next week, I'll be starting my 10th year and I'm thriving and have been for many years now. And yeah, I'll be happy to tell you how I got from there to here today talking to you guys. But yeah, I mean, it's been quite a journey, and I've learned so much. And I'm one last thing before Mark, you start asking me questions. I'm gonna agree with Jason that the people I've met in the cancer community are amazing, amazing. And I'm blessed to have met you. I think what did we determine that your wife and I went to the same high school in Los Angeles, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's a small world too. Anyway, yes, please let me know what direction you want me to go in.
Well, let's start off with how you got diagnosed and that part of the journey, and we'll get into exactly what you experienced with your original treatments and what you
Okay.
decided to do.
Okay. So getting diagnosed, and it seems like all the people on this call have been diagnosed. So you know how scary that is. It's petrifying. I mean, I'll speak for myself right now, but it's a petrifying thing to hear your doctor or radiologist saying you have a mass or you have cancer. And my fear was pretty strong. It was Halloween Day, 2016, and I was going in for a scan. I had been having some indigestion, but I wasn't in any pain. But the indigestion had been going on for a couple of months. I was also really depressed, which is weird because my life was going really well at the time. It turns out I didn't know this, but depression is a precursor or a warning sign from your body for people with pancreatic cancer. I didn't learn that until a few months later. But anyway, I went in for a scan that day and they came out and they said, just wait here in the waiting room. And they made me wait for like a half hour, 45 minutes, which is not a good sign. And then I went up to the front desk in the radiologist's office. I said, what's going on? They said, well, we want to run some tests that your doctor didn't order. Also, not something you want to hear. So they ran the other tests and, more waiting. And then they called me into a private room and told me that I had a mass in my pancreas. And that's when my world was just shattered. I had to go home that day on Halloween to tell my kids who were on their way to parties. They were 14 and 12 at the time, so they were just barely teenagers. Not a good first day. The last thing that happened that day was my doctor who had ordered the scans. called me. He had heard the news and he called me, and he said this with good intentions, but I didn't take it with good intentions. He said, I asked him, I said, what should I do? And he said, I think you should pray. And he meant that in a good way. I took it to, I thought he was saying, you're a goner. There's nothing else we can do for you. And with pancreatic cancer, that's actually not all that wrong. But anyway, immediately I started doing chemotherapy, within a week or so, 2 weeks. I did chemo for a couple months till January 2017. It wasn't working. The scan showed the tumor was growing. They upped the chemo, which made me miserable. And in March of 2017, they did another scan and chemo was still not working. So that's when I'd had enough. I was so, I mean, I was weak. I mean, my partner and I were thinking about getting me a 24-hour live-in nurse. That's how well I wasn't doing. And I was just emotionally miserable and sleeping too much. And so I was taken to UCLA Medical Center one night in March for dehydration. And they didn't keep me there. I went home that night. And the next morning, I was supposed to do more chemo. And I woke up that morning and I just decided, spur of the moment, it wasn't a well thought out plan. I said, I'm not doing chemo anymore. I'm just done. And I haven't seen that oncologist or talked to him since. I fired him basically. I had no plan B when I quit. I just knew I couldn't keep doing that because I thought the chemo was going to kill me before the cancer would have killed me. Um, I'll say one other thing, and then Mark, you can ask me other questions. That day, I didn't know it at the time, of course, but that day, the day I quit chemo and fired my oncologist, it turned out to be the most pivotal, best day because it opened up a world of possibilities about all these other alternative treatments and also some alternative Western medicine treatments that I just knew very little about. So yeah, that what was a really scary day of quitting chemo turned into the best day.
Yeah, that's awesome, Chris. How was your inner circle, the people around you, how did they react to the fact that you wanted to quit chemo? And how did you deal with that?
So there's a couple of answers to that. First of all, when I was very public with my journey back then, I still am now, but I was writing on social media, I was doing blogging on WordPress. I didn't keep it a secret of what I was going through, even when it was bad. Um, so when people would find out, my friends and even casual friends would find out what I was going through, and I would get what I call the pity look because everyone knows cancer or everyone knows pancreatic cancer is one of those deadly diseases. And so early on, I was getting the pity look. When I quit, to answer your question, when I quit chemo, I I think people were afraid for me, but they also knew that I wasn't doing well, and I think they sort of figured, in what's in the play in football they call when the quarterback throws the ball downfield and just hopes and prays that one of the players catches it. It's called a Hail Mary throw. And I think my friends thought I was just throwing a Hail Mary, and I think most of them thought it wouldn't work, but they people were very respectful, which I appreciated. My partner, I don't know if my partner would have done the same thing that I did, but she was always, it's your body, you get to decide. So I love that about her. Um, yeah, I would say respectful mostly. And well, I'll add one thing. If people weren't, or if people thought I was insane, they didn't tell me, which I appreciated.
Okay, so then what happened next? Okay, so you quit chemo. What
That,
plan?
yeah, I mean,
What?
I started looking into options. There was a clinic, a natural, MD who had natural cures and treatments in New York. They wouldn't take me because they don't like people who have done chemo. I found a clinic in Germany that a friend of mine, a casual friend of mine, had gone to. He had bladder cancer, and by the way, he's still alive and doing well. 10 years later for him, and I just started thinking maybe I need to go to a clinic. And my friends raised the money for me. They raised like $60,000 on GoFundMe, and so I was able to pay for the treatment and also fly a couple of family members and friends over there. So I went to Frankfurt, Germany, and like a month later, a month and a half later, um, did 3 weeks of treatment there. That by itself didn't turn the tide, but what it did is it helped heal my body because coming off of chemo, for those of you who've done it, chemo is poison. I mean, chemo can kill cancer cells, but it also kills healthy cells. And I needed to get healthy first and foremost. So going to Germany for 3 weeks in Frankfurt really, really helped in that respect. When I came back, I took two different paths. One, there was a drug that some of you have heard of, an immunotherapy drug called Keytruda. It's advertised on TV everywhere. Keytruda had just been approved for the type of pancreatic cancer that I had. And so all my doctors thought, yeah, you should do that and do all the alternative stuff at the same time, which my regular doctors weren't really happy with. But I, maybe that's a good time to interject. And I think everyone on this call knows this. When I get asked, what's the number one thing you did, and I get asked that all the time, I say I took charge of my health. I took charge of my health, and it could have been a deadly mistake, but I always felt like at least I'm in the driver's seat. If I'm going to go down, I'm going to go down on my terms, not on terms that what they wanted me to do, which would have killed me. Um, so I did so many non-Western medicine things in addition to I did Keytruda for about a year and a half, close to 2 years. Last time I did that was maybe early 2019 or so, mid 2019. I have not done anything Western medicine since then for the last 6 years. Um, but the non-Western stuff, Mark, if you're going to ask me about that, I mean, I've got a list, a mile long of things I tried, and I don't even know what worked because I did so many things. But I also don't really give a shit at this point what it was. I don't think it was any one thing. I think it was a combination of taking charge of my health, working hard, because I think getting healthy is hard work. Um, and I think that's really one of the secrets is find a way to get healthier. So your body has a better chance of withstanding the Western medicine treatments, building your immune system. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there were so many things I did.
What, I know you've got a laundry list of things that you did. What were some of the main things that you did, and if you could describe those?
Yeah,
I know
yeah,
how many things. I mean, I know approximately how many things you did, and it's extensive. In fact,
and
this guy has done more things. He's one of the few people in fact, the only person I've met who's done more than me, which blew me away. But yeah, if you could kind of outline some of the main things that you did, and especially the ones that you felt were prominent.
it took me a while, but changing how I ate, I think is critical for anyone going through a chronic disease, chronic illness. So I didn't do this right away, but I'm religious about it for the last few years. I eat very low carb. I eat clean food. I think all of you guys know this. Sugar and carbs are known to cause cancer, and sugar and carbs are known to make cancer worse. And so I decided it took me a year or two to find my footing on that, but I to this day I still eat low carb. I eat very clean food, organic when possible. I read labels religiously now. If I can't read an ingredient or if I know it's a chemical or a preservative, I stay away from it. I stay away from boxed foods. I stay away from canned foods. Um, just much more mindful about what I eat. So I think that's a big part of getting healthy. Moving my body. I walk 5 miles a day. I didn't do this when I first got diagnosed, but now I walk 5 miles a day. I get outside, I get fresh air, I get my body moving, I get the blood moving. Um, it's good for the mental, emotional health, gets your heart rate going, and walking is free. So, I tell people even if you can only do 10 minutes twice a day, do that. Get outside. So there's the exercise, there's the food. I dealt with my mental, emotional. I was up until maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I was in therapy for a long time. And I mean, all of us have had stuff in our lives, all of us. You don't get out of this life unscathed. Some have it worse than others, but I had some unresolved stuff that I needed to deal with. So I dealt with that, dealt with a little bit of the trauma. I tried to reduce stress. Impossible to reduce stress complete or to eliminate stress, but it's possible to reduce it. Um, Dealt with that. Toxic exposures. I mean, where Mark's wife and I went to high school in the San Fernando Valley, where I think Jason grew up, was smoggy as hell. I lived and breathed that crappy air for 30 years. That can't be healthy. Where I went to high school was across the street from a toxic dump before they were regulated. I was breathing that shit. So, we have toxins in our household products. So I definitely paid more attention to that. But the protocols, which I think is what you're asking about, I did supplements up the yin yang. I did vitamin infusions, Laetrile, vitamin C, ozone, um, coffee enemas. I mean, I don't know how many of you have tried coffee enemas. I call it the crappuccino. It's messy, but it helps you detox. I have an infrared sauna here at my house that I use every day, and I've been using it for the last 5 years or so. Um, I'm in there 90 minutes a day. I already did my 90 minutes this morning. I usually read or watch a show or something on my iPad because you're not fully enclosed. Your head is out, your arms are out. But that's part of my daily ritual. Acupuncture, CBD, CBG, hyperthermia, heat treatments. I'm forgetting everything now. I don't keep a list in front of me, so I'll remember more things as we talk. But there's probably about 20 more things I'm forgetting right now.
What is your typical day like? Not when you're
Mhm.
traveling or anything like that, but when you're at home, tell us about your day.
So I am traveling a lot, but typical day would have been a day like yesterday where I'm up. I wake up early, so I'm up at 4:30 or 5 a.m. I'm in my sauna pretty quickly after that. Um, I live in Portland, Oregon, right near a great hiking trail. So I'm out on this hiking trail at least once a day, maybe twice if I have time. My partner and I took a long hike yesterday, long walk. Um, I'm still working. I'm turning 69 in a couple months, but I'm still working part-time at different jobs, which makes it a full-time thing. I'm doing cancer coaching now. That takes up 3 or 4 hours a day, usually, not every day. I mean, part of every day is trying to remember to be grateful. Um, and I respect. I'm not particularly religious, and I respect other people if they are or whatever they believe. But I've definitely become more grateful and more spiritual since this journey started 9 years ago. And so I try to remember to be grateful every day. Um, I don't know what's coming after we die, and we're all going to die. But so I want to make sure that I'm grateful for what I have today. And I think we are pretty lucky, in a lot of ways. Even if you've been dealt, um, some bad blows here and there. One other thing I'll say, and this may sound a little weird, but I believe it for me. I'm not saying anyone else has to believe it, but cancer for me changed my life in a good way. It changed my life for the better, and I wish I didn't have to go through cancer to have learned what I learned. But whether there's a God or a spirit or some almighty being, whatever it was, that wasn't my path. The path was I had to get that to learn what I've learned and become more grateful and to be living a better life.
Getting back to your day. So talk about your meals. What are you eating on an average day, and what are you doing? What are you drinking, and things like that.
Drink a lot of water. Um, and I used to be, sorry, I'm getting over a cold from last week. lots of water. I don't really drink alcohol all that much. I don't really drink juice all that much. I've eliminated caffeine, so I'm not a coffee or a green tea drinker. So water is my drink of choice. Once in a while, I'll have a glass of, half a glass of wine, maybe. But that's really it. Um, Food. Um, I mean, I can think yesterday, what did I have? I had two hard-boiled eggs for breakfast. I don't really eat much for lunch. Um, I'm, I'll have some nuts or an avocado. That's what I had yesterday. Dinner is my big meal. Um, but even then, it's usually some sort of protein, I'm a big fish eater, oyster eater. Um, so usually some sort of fish, but maybe chicken. Some people, the weird thing about nutrition and cancer is everyone's got an opinion and the opinions conflict with each other. I mean, some people say you got to be vegan, which I have never done. Some people say vegetarian, which I dabbled in a little bit, didn't really succeed with that. Some people say keto. Some people say pescatarian. I mean, there's so many different views in all this. And for me, and it's frustrating when you hear different views that conflict with each other. But for me, I just eat sensibly and I eat cleanly. I don't eat a lot of red meat, but I'll eat it if it's clean. If I know it's from a good source, I'm not going to eat red meat from a Safeway or a Vons or something like that because that's meat that's been shot up with hormones and chemicals and stuff like that. So yeah, it's more clean eating. I try not to overeat. I try to make sure that I eat what's on my plate and then sensible portions, and then I stop for 15 or 20 minutes because the feeling of fullness always trails the actual eating. And I didn't know that. That's why I would have seconds. I thought I was still hungry, and I really wasn't hungry. I was just eating out of habit more than anything else, or out of flavor. So I'm just more mindful of how I eat, but I do try and eat clean food. I rarely have dessert, rarely have sweets. I used to love eating Italian food, pasta, and all that, and I rarely eat it now. Um, Not because I don't like it, I miss it actually, but to me, almost I think I do this every meal. Every meal, I'm looking at what's in front of me or what I put in front of me, and I think, is this going to help me or is this going to hurt me? And that's a good way of staying mindful about what you're putting into your body. And I am so convinced, especially with Americans. I mean, Americans, I'm not talking about this group here, I'm just speaking in general. And the data backs this up. We are a profoundly unhealthy country. And we've also become a profoundly sedentary country. And those two combinations, those two things have combined to make us unhealthy. And so for personally, I just like, what can I do to get healthier? And when I look at it really simply, then the answers are actually pretty simple. I don't have to make it complicated.
Chris, I love what you just said.
Mm.
You look at your plate and ask yourself, is this going to help me or hurt me? And I think that is phenomenal advice for anybody, going through. Actually, I think that's phenomenal advice for anyone, because we all should be mindful about what we're putting in our bodies. I mean, it's crazy because uh, my daughter and son-in-law, they just, love to eat whatever it is, and it's like, and they both just turned 30 this past year. And I tell them that, at some point, and hopefully sooner than later, you're going to have to realize that the things that you're putting in your mouth are not helping you. They are profoundly affecting your life. And they're starting to, they're at the age where they're starting to see, like, hey, I'm not in my teens anymore. So I love that advice. Absolutely. Look at your plate and say to yourself, is this plate going to help me or hurt me? Or is this item on my plate, is this going to help me or hurt me? So that's absolutely excellent. Let's go to talking about your infrared sauna. I had one for probably a couple of years, and it's a lot of work. I mean, that infrared sauna, I mean, I thought it was. I was like, having to clean it, you're sweating in it all the time. Why do you feel it's so important to your day?
And by the way, I shouldn't admit this, but I'm going to. I mean, I've had mine for 5 years. I've never cleaned it. I just air it out. It's one of those saunas that you zip up. Like I said,
Uh-huh.
your arms and head are out. So I just feel like, I mean, I'll wipe it down, but that's the extent of what I'll do. For me, it's important, uh, as again, just speaking personally, it's part of my good habits. I feel it's important for detoxing. Um, Arguably, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm the one that has the science to back up what I'm about to say, but I think heat helps heal your body, not just detoxing. And so, I mean, if I showed you photos of me 5 years ago, I look younger now than I did 5 years ago. And yeah, I mean, there could be a few other reasons too. Eating healthier, all that stuff could be factors. But I'm convinced doing that detoxing every day is the primary reason. Has to be. Um, so yeah, it's an important part of my day. Um, like I said, I do it early in the morning then I'm done. If I don't do it in the morning, once in a while I'll miss it for work or traveling. I definitely don't do it. But to me, it's like, oh, okay, I have this quiet morning to myself, and this is what I'm going to do. And like I said, I can catch up on stuff. I can catch up on work. I can answer emails. I've done phone calls. I've done video calls. I just keep my Zoom camera off, my camera off, um, so I can be productive in it too.
That's great. That's great. Let's talk about your mindset and how, at what point, you talked about depression at the beginning and things like that. At what point did your mindset change, or was it a gradual thing? Did it turn on a dime? Was it one moment that you said, "Hey, how did that happen?"
I think it was gradual. I don't think there was any one moment. Um, and I mean, early on, I didn't mention this, but I'll mention it now. It wasn't just depression I was having. Once I got diagnosed, I actually had suicidal thoughts because I didn't want to die a painful death from cancer or chemo. So I never did it seriously, but I would have reoccurring thoughts about, oh, maybe I'll just end this. Um, and I don't want to sit here and tell you that, because I think some depression and some is normal, right? I mean, it's part of the human condition to have moments or periods like that. And I still get them once in a while. It's just not as deep and not as long as it used to be. And now I know, okay, that's what this is. Um, I look and I don't care what side of the fence people are on politically. You look at what's going on in this country and it's like, holy shit. I mean, that can get you depressed just on its own, right? What goes hand in hand with all that is fear, I think. And I had tremendous fear early on, as I mentioned. It wasn't just a few times I thought I was going to die. It wasn't dozens of times or hundreds of times. I thought it literally thousands of times that first year. I thought I was going to die. I mean, several times a day times 365 is you get into the thousands, right?
Wow.
It was a lot, but I mean, it would be like, a few seconds or a minute or whatever, but it was constant. Almost 3 years ago now, just I'm giving you an example, even though the fear and depression and all that has definitely subsided, thankfully. 2, 3 years ago, I had a really nasty cough and I got tested for pneumonia. It wasn't pneumonia. I got tested for COVID. It wasn't COVID. Tested for flu. It wasn't flu. So on the one hand, I was glad I didn't have any of those things. On the other hand, it's like, what is it? And I got scared. And I thought, oh, my cancer's come back. Turned out to be bronchitis. And it took about a month to completely get rid of that cough. But my point is, I don't think the fear, especially when you get diagnosed with cancer, I don't think the fear ever completely goes away. I think it does diminish. It lessens, and you reckon, like I said, you can recognize it more. I don't think it ever completely goes away. I've never met any cancer patient that says they are free of fear.
I think fear, I don't know how many people have heard this. One of my favorite motivational speakers is Zig Ziglar. He's since passed many years ago. I've seen him live. Uh, but I heard his definition of fear has always left a great impression on me. Fear, Fear, false evidence appearing real. And I've kept that one with me for decades. And when you really break it down, a lot of fear is just not knowing. It's not knowing what's
Yeah.
going to happen. It's not knowing, when you get that diagnosis originally, the fear is off the charts, and the reason for that is lack of knowledge and a lot of it, Now your fear is different. Your fear has matured in a sense. It's not like, because whatever we have become or whatever we are, whether we're an accountant, a doctor, a lawyer, you go to school for years and years and years and you study and you take tests and all this kind of stuff and you become what you become. But how many people actually study cancer? And which is almost nobody. I probably I did my final paper in college. I actually did it on cancer, which is kind of
Hmm.
weird, but
Wow.
but I actually did that, and that's another story because that was a crazy situation. But because of lack of knowledge, uh, you know, fear creeps in. So talk about that aspect of it, Chris. And I know you have a lot of thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'm going to answer something you didn't ask, but hopefully I'll be able to get to answer your question. Do any of you know who Dr. Zach Bush is? You should look him up if you don't know who he is. He's on social media. He's on if you Google him. Um, MD, who's sort of I think he has seen the light. I heard him speak at a conference a couple of weeks ago. Excuse me, and he said, "I tell my patients 100% of you are going to die. 100% of my patients are going to die." And then he says, "But I'm going to help teach you how to live." And I thought that is beautiful because we are all going to die, right? We are. No one gets out of this alive. But just I want to incorporate that actually into my coaching practice. I don't know how long any of you, I don't know how long I'm going to live. I can get hit by a bus tonight, but I can live better. I can live healthier. Um, so yeah, I wanted to mention that to this group. It's all about how to live. It's not about avoiding death. So you asked me about fear, and I mean, I think that's part of it. Maybe part of it is just a recognition. Part of the fear is, none of us want to die, right? Um, but how are we going to live until we do? So that's been more of my focus, especially in the last 2 weeks since I heard him speak.
Can you put his
Recognizing this.
can you put his name in the chat so we have access to that? Because I love that. That's really, really good. Uh, one of our friend, one of Thomas's and I's friend, Chip Littlejohn, who's spoken here before, he and I love this. I stole it from him actually. He said, healthy people have 1,000 dreams, but a sick person only has one,
Mm.
which I just love. I just love because when you get down to it, when we're going through the throes of cancer, we're not thinking about, you know, most of us aren't thinking about, some of the things that we normally do think about in life. We're thinking about how are we going to live? How are we going to navigate this situation? So, a lot of life is focus and, you know, dealing with the fear and dealing with emotions. We could be our own worst enemies, because we have this thing called our mind. And our mind can play tricks on us, and our mind can tell us things that, may or may not be true. We do need to listen to our gut, but sometimes, all these other things come into play. So,
By the
yeah.
way, I mean that's a good thing to bring up about listening to our gut. Or, you can call it gut, your intuition, whatever term. I'm a huge believer in listening to your gut. Huge believer. Because I look back on my life and I think all the times that I should do this, but I'm going to do this instead. When I didn't listen to my gut, more often than not, it turned into a mistake. When I do listen to my gut, it's not 100% foolproof because nothing is perfect, but the percentage of success or making the right choice is much higher if I listen to my gut. And so there's something to be said for that, right? We kind of know most of the time. It's really a question: are we listening, and are we going to act on what we're telling ourselves, what our body is telling us?
Talk about your experience in Germany and what you actually went through at that clinic.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
yeah, I'd love to hear that. In fact, I don't remember even discussing that with you in our interviews.
So before I answer that, so in the chat, I put Zach Bush's name. I put Dr. Katie Deming for fasting. When Boyd and I were talking earlier about that, look her up. She's in Portland, Oregon. She's great. She um, former radiation oncologist. And then I also put in for Jason, if he's still listening, um, the article that I summarized for some scientists on glioblastoma and using a keto diet. So, and I can send all this stuff to you as well, Mark. So Germany, when I looked into going back in March of, or March and April of 2017, I was so weak from the chemo. I remember thinking, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it there and live. That's how weak I was. Or maybe I'll get there and I won't be able to come back. By the way, just a funny aside, I learned on that trip that U.S. passports have to be current within 6 months of your travel. I did not know that, and thankfully, someone told me that about a month before my trip to Germany. And they'd not told me that, I wouldn't have been able to make it because my passport was less than 6 months from expiration. Um, so I quickly got it renewed. I was, throwing the Hail Mary. Going to Germany was, I can't do the chemo anymore, so I got to try other things. I knew I wanted to live. I think I mentioned my kids were 14 and 12. I was so worried that I wouldn't get to see them graduate high school. The spoiler alert is one just graduated college 3 months ago, and the other one's halfway through college. So yes, I got that, and now I'm going to get. Hopefully, I won't get hit by that bus, and I'll get to see both of them graduate college. But part of the Germany thing for me was I wasn't looking at going to Germany as like this is going to cure me, and I don't think it cured me. But as I mentioned earlier, it changed the trajectory. Instead of going down like this on chemo, I was both leveling out and starting to get healthier. And so I think if I had to characterize what that trip meant to me, it was getting healthy, getting healthier. They weren't making promises. They weren't saying this is going to be This is going to cure you of cancer. So I didn't have unrealistic expectations, but even changing the trajectory was a big deal, a big deal. From thinking thousands of times that I was going to die, I started thinking, oh, maybe I can do this. And so, and I noticed I was getting healthier when I was there. And I noticed I was getting healthier even when I came back to Los Angeles. So, yeah, that's what that meant to me. I mean, some of the stuff I did over there, I've talked about. I was an outpatient for 3 weeks, Monday through Friday. I was there from like 8:30 in the morning till like 2 in the afternoon. So I had time. I had never been to Frankfurt before, so I had time to actually be a tourist. I wasn't feeling great still because I was still kind of weak, but I walked. That's actually when I started my walking thing was in Germany, and it's such a great walking city that I was walking maybe for 2 hours a day, and that helped me too. But I think Germany. If I had to look, now that's 8 years later, I think I look back on that. It's like, oh, okay, it helped change the trajectory of my journey.
How exactly did it do that?
They were feeding me well. They were teaching me better lifestyle
Mm.
habits. Um, all the infusions they were giving me. Um, they were very supportive, very nurturing. Um, the doctor who I had, I don't keep in touch with him a lot now, but for the first couple of years, I would text with him every few months. Now maybe it's every couple of years. Um, but yeah, they really showed that they cared, and that really helped too. Um, I forgot what your question was, but yeah, it definitely, no question that I know it helped me.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, if you had to do it all over again, would you still go there?
So what I know now, what I've learned in the last few years that I didn't know then, is that there's clinics. I mean, you guys probably all know this. There's clinics everywhere around the world, including in the U.S. now. So would I still go there? I don't know. I would still go to that clinic. I think I would still go to a clinic just because I needed something to turn me around. Um, there's plenty of good clinics in Mexico and in Europe, other places in Europe. The place I actually went to is no longer there in Frankfurt. They got bought out and then they consolidated, so they're still around. They're just not in Frankfurt anymore. Um, yeah, I would still go. I would still go. No question, it helped me.
That's great. So you changed your trajectory.
Mhm.
What was the timeline of you doing that to where you got to the point where you said, I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna be fine.
Actually, that actually took another year and a half, maybe, um, before I started really having the confidence. Like, oh, I'm not going to be one of those 70% that are dead within a year. So even maybe hitting the first anniversary was probably pretty meaningful. That would have been November or late October of 2017. Um, but confidence gets built slowly, I think, and so I just think it was a progression over time. I do remember. Uh, I'm going to plug something. I wrote a book about my journey in 2020, and
What's the name of it?
I, it's called "Life is a Ride: My Unconventional Journey of Cancer Recovery." And I'll tell you briefly, then I'll answer your question. I wrote it because I knew I had a good story with pancreatic cancer. Most people don't make it, so I was getting calls and emails, and still do, from people around the world. Tell me what you did. Tell me what you did. And so oh, okay, I'll write a book. Um, when the book was coming out in September of 2020, I remember I was still doing regular scans, and I don't do them now, but remember going to get my scan and thinking, what if they find something that's going to be horrible for book sales? And so it was I sort of had if you don't know me, I think Mark knows me a little bit now. I have a very dark sense of humor. Um, But even then, the fear hadn't completely gone away in 2020. I was still thinking, oh, I mean, you guys know how it is. You go for scans and you don't know, right? You don't know. What do they call it? Scanxiety, right?
What
Um,
do you do in place of scans?
I hadn't, I just had a scan 2 or 3 months ago. It was the first one I'd had in 3.5 years. Um, and by the way, when I tell my story, like I've been telling for the last 45 minutes, I don't think people should do what I do. I think everyone's journey is individual. I mean, maybe there's some overlap in in how our journeys unfold. But so when I say, I haven't had a scan for 3.5 years, I don't want to come across as saying, oh, don't get scans. Um, for me, it was just scans can be harmful. And I just felt like I'm feeling really good. Why do I need to do this? And for me, it fell under the umbrella of take charge of your health. If I was feeling shitty, I'd get a scan in a heartbeat.
Mhm.
It's not that I'm against scans or anything. I just felt like for me, I didn't want to do it. I will add to that. So for insurance purposes, I was selling my life insurance policy, which was set to expire. And to do that, I had to have a current scan in May and June. And so I got some scans here in Portland. And they actually found like this nodule near by the way, my pancreas looked great, which was really great. But they found this nodule in my pelvis and oh, come back in for more tests. And then we want to do a biopsy. And I said, no, I'm not doing it. And I haven't done it. And they're still calling me to come in for more scans and stuff. And again, I don't want anyone to do what I have done other than take charge of your health. I do want everyone to do that. But for me, it's like, shit shows up on scans all the time. A little nodule is not that big of a deal. If I started feeling bad, yes, then I would get tested, and then I would take action. But to me, that's the number one thing of how are you feeling? How are you feeling? And I feel great.
Carrie. Carrie wants to say something. Go ahead, Carrie.
Hi. Yes, I did. I had a few thoughts as we were talking, you were talking, and I just wanted to say to Chris, thanks so much for taking the time to share your story today, and I'm really glad that you're here to be able to do it. The question that I had was when you were talking earlier about the impact of fear, the fear that you go through as a cancer patient. I was wondering what your thoughts were on um, whether or not a lot of the fear has to do with a feeling of a loss of control. Because once you're diagnosed with cancer, like as speaking for myself, that was one of the things I am still dealing with now is feeling, like I'm making choices to regain control back in my life, and then I wondered if you thought that when you had the mind shift to make the decision, like you said, to be in the driver's seat and to say, I'm stopping chemo, I'm going to Germany, would you agree that possibly it was the also the shift of your mindset
Yeah,
to
I think that's a great point.
that helped you with
Yeah.
the with the deal with the feeling of the loss of control that you have as a cancer patient.
I love the how you said it. Yes, loss of control, taking charge. Yeah, absolutely. I think all that stuff helped. I remember my therapist kept advising me because I've run my own company for 40 years. So I'm the CEO, right? And my therapist would say, be the CEO of your journey, be the CEO. And it was such great advice. Um, and it does help with the fear and it does help with the lack of control. I think, and I'm not being critical, I'm just being observational. I think too many of us, and I did this too, we just listen to our doctors.
Mm-hmm.
We put them on a pedestal. I will be the first to admit that doctors know a lot more than me about a lot of things, and they know more about chemo and radiation and surgery and all that stuff. I'm not an expert in any of that. I mean, people ask me all the time about different chemo drugs, and it goes way over my head. I don't even try to answer. But I know more about my body, and I know more about how I'm feeling. And I know more about what we talked about earlier about instincts, what is resonating, what isn't resonating. So yeah. All this stuff plays a factor. I think the stuff we can't measure. Um,
And
one
two,
other thing,
when you made the decision that, like you were saying earlier about, hey, I think I can do this, like when you had that shift in your mind of, I'm going to be okay. I had that shift in my mind. It was more, I have to be okay, because I have a son with special needs, and it was more of a like, this isn't going to work for me. Like, I'm not. I went from, oh my god, I'm going to die, to, no, that's not going to work for me. I have to be okay.
yeah.
I just had to sort of focus on, okay, what do I have to do to get there? But I also just had one more quick question about, because you
Mhm.
mentioned you have kids. How did you deal with when, if and when you had to tell them that you were sick? Because that was definitely one of the hardest things I with cancer. I mean, I had to do was tell my son that I had cancer, because he has anxiety, and he's on the autism spectrum, and etc. And yeah, so I just wondered, how did you get through that? Because you seem to have a very uh, good outlook on everything, and just wondered how you handled that.
It was the worst conversation I've ever had in my life. It was the first day when I got diagnosed. So there were three things that day, three bad things. One was getting the diagnosis. Two was having the other doctor say, "I think you should pray." And the third thing was telling my kids. Like I said, they were 14 and 12. My ex-wife, I was single at the time. My ex-wife was in Australia visiting some friends, so I had no backup at that point. My kids were with me. I was really upset that day. I was crying a lot. I was scared. There's no rehearsal for this. There's no class that tells you or that teaches you how to talk to your loved ones about this stuff. So I had been crying in the car on the way home because I was so scared and upset. But I also knew, okay, I have to go in the house. I have to talk to my kids. So it's still hard for me to tell the story, but I am going to tell it, and I've told it to other people too. I just gathered them in our living room, and I told them what I knew. I was crying. I could see, and I held their hands, and I could see that they were scared. I didn't come across as like, this will be fine. I kind of, because I didn't know it was going to be fine. I just said, this is what they know. This is what they told me. I have to learn more information. I admitted to them I was scared, and they could see it too. Oh yeah, I mean, that's not something you want to tell your kids.
No,
It is horrible. I mean, I will say, second to that, I mean, telling my partner, I called her on the phone coming home from the radiologist's office. That was hard. And then calling my ex-wife in New Zealand, and I had to FaceTime with her, and I burst into tears, and she took that as something was wrong with the kids.
mm,
Right. I mean, that's she's a good mom. That's what parents do. Her ex calls her on the phone. She sees I'm crying, and she thinks, "Tell me what happened to the kids. What happened to the kids?" And I said, "No, no, no, it's me." So that was a hard conversation too. None of that stuff's easy. It's necessary. I think we have to do it, but really, really hard. And I hope I never have to do that again. I'm knocking on wood right now.
me too. Thank you very much for sharing that
Mm.
with me.
Mm. Thanks
Great
for asking.
question, Carrie.
Yeah.
Great question. I just want to point out at this time, Chris, I get told this a lot, and I think this has become more pronounced what I'm going to share right now. I have a lot of people say, man, you are so blunt. You just always get right to the chase. And I know you're the same way, Chris. And
Mm.
and I think a lot of it, with cancer patients is we don't have time to mess around. We just have an agenda. We cut to the chase. We tell it like it is, and you either accept it or you don't. It's that's just the way it is. And I really appreciate your approach and your honesty in sharing all of this with us because it's really, really important, really, really great information. So thank you for that.
Appreciate those words. Thank you. I mean, I just think um, I think cancer is can be avoidable. I mean, we know 90% of cancers are not hereditary. Most are lifestyle and toxins and environmental factors and how we eat and all that stuff, or what we don't eat. So it's my mission now to talk to people like this, groups like yours. I do speaking engagements now, cancer coach. I can't keep my mouth shut. I can't. I learned too much, and some of it is I want people to avoid what I went through. Um, what's the saying? The best cure is prevention, right? And so that's part of what I want to teach. But that's hard. I didn't learn that till after I got diagnosed. But yeah, I just want people to know. So I'm not keeping my mouth shut.
Awesome. Lihia. Oh, let me introduce Lihia. She got tied up with something earlier. Lihia is my main moderator,
Hmm.
and she is an absolutely fabulous person. She's from Costa Rica, and now she's in Canada herself. So, Lihia, you had a question or a comment?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Mark, for the introduction. Yes, my apologies for being late today. I am the fan number one of this community. I really love it. Yes, first of all, thank you so much, Chris, for telling this story, for sharing your story with us, and for giving us also an example, an inspiration, and strength for not only facing any disease, but also for life challenges that we always have daily. Fear is something natural, and not only for cancer patients, but also as caregivers. We also feel that that fear that what is going to happen to our relatives. I was taking care of my mom and some other beloved people, and the fear we feel about the uncertainty what is going to happen is also natural. It's not easy to handle, but it is manageable depending on our mindset. Because in my case, I felt always that I had to be strong enough to to support those people, especially my
Mm.
mom, and that is a really beautiful thing. And for me it was a privilege to be there for her and supporting her all the time. I think family is the most amazing support we can have during that time. Also, I want to share that in many cases, when the person is having those news about cancer, usually the person, like in your case, you're telling to your kids, and it is a very hard moment. In my case, it's the other way around. I got the news, and my mom didn't know anything, so I had to tell the news to her, so I know what is the feeling. Even when I was not suffering the disease, I felt in my heart how difficult it is to talk to her, to be in front of her and telling her what was happening, and be composed and be brave. So I don't during those moments I don't start crying or something. But it is really hard. But at the same time, those are the times that make us stronger. Those are the times that show us what is our real mission in life. And in my case, I thank God, even when it was really hard, the example I got from her, it was amazing. So probably your kids feel the same way. And not only that, but this is one of the reasons I am here today, because I feel my heart is in this community and with all the
Mm.
people I can support. Thank you so much, Chris, again.
I love that. I just have one comment, more about where you're from than what you said, although I do appreciate what you said. I spent time in Costa Rica about
Woo.
25 years ago, and beautiful country, really, really pretty. I
Thank
did one of
you.
those.
You need to go to Costa Rica again.
I love being there. I mean, the RNL volcano and the whole West
Oh,
Coast and the, yeah, pretty,
one of the
pretty
most
country.
beautiful places. Yes,
Yeah,
Arenal volcano is stunning, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
it
but
really is.
thank you so much, and all my admiration for you and your journey.
Thank, thank you. Mark, I have to tell you, I have like 10 more minutes because I have to pack for and get out of here for my trip, but I know there's a couple more questions,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. You're in demand here. Go ahead, Boyd.
I think Thomas had raised his hand first, but I'll go quick. So, Chris, first of all, thank you so much for sharing. Um, I don't know if I'd ever shared this before, but I mean, pancreatic cancer is just it's the one that I've lost some close friends to, and it's an absolute beast. And so, thank you, thank you for allowing for sharing your story. And it's funny, I was just talking to my wife yesterday, and I did go through traditional medicine and all those other things. But I remember just certain moments. I was in and out of the hospital for a year where I said, no, I'm not interested. And, like you'd get a fever and then they'd send in an intern to poke you and saying, we're not doing this. You're not sticking another needle in my arm. If you want to practice on somebody, find a corpse.
Hmm.
And we're not doing this. And I got into some very passionate arguments with people when my cancer relapsed because of the incompetence of the medical system. It was my wife that went online and actually found the hospital that saved my life and did the unrelated transplant. And to say I've had some incredibly choice words with medical doctors is an understatement. But, we advocated to where and when I had my transplant. And then the third thing too is I live this amazing life and I've done all these things, but fortunately or unfortunately, I'm a slow learner. But when I finally get something, I'm very passionate about it. Is um, Mark had made mention that you remembered Sean and Tracy, but I lost two friends a couple of weeks ago. They were both amazing men. They were personal friends of mine. They were Christians. Their advocacy within the cancer world was extraordinary. But I'll just say this: traditional medicine killed them. And so there's if you're looking for another person, it's Chris Warwick or Chris Beat Cancer, and I'm
Hmm.
very much a fan of his because he went through traditional medicine. And one of the other challenges, Mark, that I never shared with you personally is we went through this year and a half journey of being concerned or determined if my 16-year-old son Nathan had cancer in his right knee and he had this growth. And long story short, we got the call from the doctor's office this week that it's not cancerous, which is the news we got last year, but he had to go for more scans and all this other nonsense. And something that Chris really helped me come to an understanding is if you've got a tumor, your body's doing the job and isolating it there. And what happens is when you blast it with chemo and radiation is that it spreads everywhere else in the body. And that was so empowering for me personally that even if Nathan did have cancer, I was like, blank this blank. I'm not going to swear because I think the meeting's being recorded. That we're done with this. We're done with the whole nonsense. And for me personally, my prayer to God every day is that I never have to go back to the hospital. I personally think that things shifted 80 years ago when they used to say nicotine was good for you, or you'd get sick and you go out in the sunlight, or even the healing frequency forks and all this stuff. And COVID was a real eye opener for me when my dad died. It was either from the vaccine or from the illness. It doesn't really matter. I got incredibly sick. Both my sons were sick, and I think this non-cancerous growth that my son got could possibly have been from the vaccine. And so, you know, um, thank you for sharing. Thank you for just saying no. And I'm very quiet in my personal beliefs and thoughts, but you are another example of a miracle that just saying no to traditional medicine saved your life. And not only that, it's your personal resolve and your determination that I thank you for celebrating.
So I thank you for your words. I have a couple thoughts. One is that I'm sure everyone here would agree that if you got hit by a car, you'd want to be taken to an emergency
Yes, of
room,
course.
right?
That's what my wife says to me. She's like, don't throw it away. But yes.
Right. I mean, there's certain things that Western medicine does that's amazing. I mean, certainly emergency medicine is great. Um, I've had back surgery, I've had shoulder surgery. I mean, you look at what they can do for professional athletes with orthopedic stuff, and that stuff I think is really state of the art. I've had cataract surgery. I mean, in the late 60s, I still don't wear glasses. So certain things Western medicine does is just amazing. But for illness, chronic illness, it's horrible.
Right.
It's just horrible. And part of me feels that the system is so screwed up. And I don't know what it's like in Canada, but I know the
It's
US
100
system pretty
times
well.
worse. It's so
Okay,
much.
well, I'll take your word for it. But I can tell you that in the US, the doctor's hands are tied. They can't deviate from the standard of care. And I think you all know what the standard of care means. They can't deviate from that because they'll either lose their medical license or they'll get sued or they won't get reimbursed by the insurance companies because we still have a private system for the most part in the US. And so there is no incentive whatsoever for them to deviate. I think there's also, they don't have the training. They don't get trained in nutrition
Right.
in
It's that
medical
simple
school.
thing. You know, the nutritionist that I had in the hospital, it's just like, who is this person? So,
Right. I mean,
anyways, I know we
they're
need to
more,
be sensitive of time. I'll stop talking.
yeah. I mean, they're more, I can talk all day. I mean, but I mean, they're dietitians. They're not even nutritionists. And you look at some of the things they're prescribing or recommending, and they're like 40 grams of sugar or carbs or something. And like, no, no, no. I mean, hospital food is notoriously unhealthy, and which makes no sense, right? You think you're going to hospital to get healthier, and they're feeding you shit. Anyway, Thomas, you had a question too.
Yeah, it was just outstanding conversation and interview.
Mm.
Great questions, Mark. That was a wonderful question, Perry. It got me a little choked up as well. What you shared, when you had to tell your children as well, and yeah, the psychology that one needs in just in life. I'm sure when someone has a terminal diagnosis, having an extraordinary psychology, mindset, and attitude is even more valid, even more important. Uh, Something you said about what I never knew, like the specific percentage, like 90% is not hereditary. Uh, I didn't know what the odds were. I just felt and believed that it had to be something really high. Like anytime I went to the doctor's office, anytime I go and they say, check this out. Do you ever have any family members that had cancer and this disease and that disease? Even though I had 3 family members that passed on from it, I always checked no because I didn't want to put that in the space. I didn't believe that. Like I wasn't going to attract that and create that. And what other things, diabetes and whatever other thing the list is. And my mother would always tell me, I said, Aunt Jean had this or Grandma had that, and Cousin Terry had this. This is, I don't care. It doesn't run in the family. It doesn't matter. You're not going to get that. My mother's, she'll be 90 in April. She's the only one of them. 11 children, 10 girls and 1 boy left, and I just got to keep the good stuff in her body and in her mind, so I want to thank you and Mark for this outstanding conversation and shares. So thank you.
So, Thomas, I'm going to forgive you for not rooting for the Dodgers,
Yeah.
like Jason and I are. But thank you for saying that. Oh, that's right. I forgot, Mark, you are too. But Thomas, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I have stopped listening to all the hereditary stuff. I mean, there could be, if your dad was a farmer and worked with some pesticides and you worked on that same farm with those same pesticides, yeah, you could have the same cancer. Absolutely, you could. But that's because of the pesticides. That's not because you inherited something. There are a small percentage that are inheritable, if that's a word. But even things like the BRCA gene, right, which people I think pretty much know what the BRCA gene is. that could increase the risk of getting cancer, but it doesn't mean you're going to get cancer. And so, yes, there's so much of this is preventable, so much,
Let's
and we're
go to
not taught that.
Jason before you have to
Okay,
take off, Chris. Go ahead,
okay.
Jason.
Whoops, you're muted.
You got to unmute yourself.
So there we go. All right. So I know that you said that you started off at UCLA. I'm, currently undergoing treatments at UCLA. Are you comfortable sharing the name of your doctor, or is that something you are uncomfortable with?
I so the first doctor I had, the one I fired, his name is William Isakoff, and he still practices in Santa Monica. He used to
Okay.
be at a private office at UCLA, and those buildings in Westwood, right outside of the campus.
Yes.
But he's now in Santa Monica, I think, like on Wilshire, down to the west. The oncologist that I liked, that I had after that, also UCLA. His name is Dr. Zev Weinberg, Wainberg. I don't know. I don't think. I mean, because I think this is a mistake that the Western medicine industry does. They specialize in certain types of cancer, so I don't think Weinberg specializes in glioblastoma.
Yeah.
Um, but
No, I appreciate that because I'm working with a doctor right now who has put me in this trial and got me on this drug, and obviously my bounce back is real. But there's going to be some other stuff that I'm going to want to do because obviously we know what the path is if I stay on it. Um, so I just want to be mindful of doctors who are, and as the previous speaker said, sometimes doctors are operating with their hands tied in the states with regards to what they're allowed to do, and but I need a doctor here in particular in the Los Angeles area because I have a great support system here. I don't want to
where
travel
where are you in
international.
where are you in LA?
So I live in the Mountain Gate area near the
Oh,
Getty.
sure. Yeah, off the 405.
Exactly. Yeah.
So there's a doctor on Wilshire in West LA, Dr. Rachel West.
Okay.
Like it sounds like Jerry West, but Rachel West.
Yeah.
And she's an MD, or maybe she's an osteopathic doctor. I can't remember, a DO, but she works with people with cancer and stuff.
Okay.
She's not going to replace your oncologist,
Yeah.
but she can help with
Adds to
some
the
that.
team. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Look her up. I like her. She's good.
Okay. I will. I will. Thank you for that advice.
Of course.
All right. Great talk. Great speaking. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I know you have to go, Chris, so why don't you head off and we'll close out the meeting here. Uh, we really appreciate it. It was really terrific. You did a fantastic job.
Well, thank you for that. I will say, this group is what makes the speaker. You guys ask great questions and you're all really knowledgeable. So that makes my job much easier. So thank you guys.
Thanks, Chris. Would you be willing to come back at sometime next year?
Anytime. Yeah.
Awesome.
Happy to.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. We're going to let you go.
All right.
We're
I'm
going to
going
kind
to
of
sign off.
wrap up here. Any other comments that anybody has that before we close it out?
So I can go.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. All right, guys. See ya.
All right. Bye-bye. Okay, what I'm going to do, what we always do is we always end up with a prayer. So I'm gonna bring on Boyd and get Boyd to come back on because
Oh dear.
he's awesome at doing it, and
Oh,
he's our prodigal son.
can I
And
just make a quick comment, Mark?
yeah, sure.
So, for those of you that don't know, like I said, I spent the past year in my own personal journey. It wasn't, there was a lot. There was a lot, and like just even the past 2 weeks. just with fasting and these things. And, something you talked about, knowledge being prayer or power, and this angst and these different things. And like my wife and I are very determined to eat healthy and to believe in those things. But there's something so powerful about, one of our mutual friends, John Brent Mark, I'm learning from him that there's something powerful in just letting other people speak and listen. And so I'm not good at that at all. And so that's, I think, part of the reason why God told me to just shut my mouth for a bit. But secondly, just having a positive, hopeful outlook is so invaluable. And I guess my third thought is family really is everything. And it was very healing for us to spend this much time together in the past year. But anyways, we'll just pray. And so Heavenly Father, we thank you for today. Today's a gift. We thank you for the lives that come across one another, the lives that are touched. I do lift up every single person in this group, and we ask in your Son's name that you would just bring peace, bring healing, wholeness, hope, and restoration. And I pray that one person's story would empower the next person to maybe think a little bit differently, to ask a few questions, and to possibly make a few changes. Thank you for Mark's desire to start this group, and I thank you for those that do lead it. And Lord, we just pray that we would be thankful that today's a beautiful day to be alive. I ask this in your Son's name.
Amen. Thank you so much, Boyd. Thank you, everyone, for. Oh, I forgot to shut off the recording. I'm going to shut off the recording right now. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here at the Cancer Conquering Community.